The More Show is in partnership with Ozark Mountain Publishing, taking readers beyond the unexplained.
If you like what you watch, then don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest updates on The More Show. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for new weekly television and radio shows.
The More Show is supported by Mindscape, Paranormal and UFO Matrix magazines, available for download on all major digital platforms.
Welcome back. I'm now joined by Sondra Sneed via Skype. Now, Sondra is a science and technology industry writer and former atheist with a secret. All the years she has spent interviewing scientists and engineers, translating their high-minded knowledge for laypersons, but her most interesting interview is with the creator of the universe, God. Good evening, Sondra.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm wonderful, and it's great to have you on. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for the invitation. I really appreciate that.
So, an atheist, Sondra. What is an atheist? Let's start there to begin with.
I think in short, an atheist is a non-believer, an anti-religious, anti-religion individual. In my case, I grew up evangelical Christian, so I was even baptized into the faith as a child and taught all the Bible stories. But I never had any experiences that one might consider religious experiences or anything that could be a tangible experience. So by the time I made it through college and there was no real evidence for the existence of a creator, then science became my religion. And of course, science is pretty anti-creator and creation as well. So
do you think science is its own religion?
Yes, and I would even say that it was my religion. It was the only. It was the only discipline that really gave me a sense of awe and wonder of the universe. I certainly didn't feel that way in the very dogmatic and authoritarian structure of religion.
And I mean, all that's based on data, though. If the data's not there, then it doesn't exist. I mean, that's the basis, is it not, of science?
It is, and that's where my head was certainly as well in my atheist years up until age 39, really.
I mean that's quite in the box as such. I mean, you having that kind of view is perfect, and if that's your view, that's fine. But do you think it's very much you're not able to not go against the grain, but to expand the possibilities of what if?
You mean as an atheist?
Yes.
Yeah. The difficulty, you almost have to accept a great deal of science on faith when it comes to the exploration of the universe where there isn't empirical data, and physicists do explore the what if, but there's and then there are aspects of scientific theory that allows for that, and it's not like religion where there seems to be certain rules written in stone, and I mean that figuratively, but in the way that the Ten Commandments are talked about, it is written in stone as to how the universe is and what it's made of. But in science, the question is always open.
Do you think, though, that being an atheist, you are empowered in a sense? Because if you're religious, then surely some of the religious context in the sense of, live this way or do it this way, otherwise you'll be punished. So, for example, an atheist doesn't have to, they are their own power in a sense. They live with by their own morals.
Yeah, and that's where my my world changed when I did have my experience with the creator of the universe. And, you know, a godless world can have certain moral values based on what seems most beneficial to everyone living together in one location. But what it doesn't have, a godless world doesn't have, is the matter of kindness and the understanding of joy and the power of love as something beyond just what human beings profess to experience between one another. So now that I have an experience and relationship with the creator of the universe, I know that what I know of a moral ethic, it comes from the heart. And science and non-believers don't understand the significance of the heart and actually belittle it as emotion, and that emotion doesn't really exist as a tangible thing. So it's not
Absolutely,
real.
yeah. No, I know. I would agree with what you're saying there, because, you know, if you speak to an atheist or a scientist, they may not knowingly go out and want to hurt anyone. But where does that not knowingly want to hurt anyone come from? There must be some deeper connection that you have with someone opposite you, that you wouldn't want to hurt that person, and that deeper connection must come from an unbinded love. That's the essence of the source, or I suppose you would call it. Well, you would call it God.
Yeah, boy, that was beautifully said. God, God, is just shorthand in my view. It's a Saxon word that came from good. So when you look at the book of Genesis, when God saw what God was, God saw that it was good. And in my model or canon and in my experience with God, that's essentially saying God saw that all was God. God saw God's self in the beginning of what we call the universe,
Yeah.
or the beginning of existence.
So I want to, that leads on to such an important question. But before we get on to what I was about to ask you there, where did your shift happen for you? When did you start communicating with the source, or God as you call it?
Yeah, so this was in 2004, and I had lost a job that I loved and a man that I loved, and I was living up in New York City, and suddenly my life had just upended, and I found myself completely and totally alone. And I would descend the staircase to the basement to write and write and write and try to quell this loneliness and emptiness and sense of panic that was coming over me. And I filled up an entire spiral notebook with a lament of my unfortunate circumstances. And then I opened up a new spiral notebook, and I put my pen on the top line. And before I noticed the pen moving, when it stopped, I noticed that something had been written. And what was written was, unemployed, question mark. It is my assertion you are employed by me. And so this was the moment when I was no longer talking to the notebook, but the notebook began talking to me. And I spent a year in solitude and isolation, and went through my life savings and did whatever I could to maintain that time in solitude with this being, and filled up 10 spiral notebooks and took dictation from what this being had to tell me
Oh,
through
wow.
many questions that I had.
Has all this work been released, or I mean, is only a portion of it been released?
The original Spiral Notebooks may someday be published. That would take a lot of effort to edit it down to consumable parts, because it is extremely complex and a lot of riddles and linguistic riddles to deepen my mind and to get me to the space. And I really did go through that layer of madness to reach the source of where I was interacting and actually becoming reprogrammed. And 8 years later, in 2011, or 7 years later in 2011, I decided it was time to sit down and write the book for the rest of the world so that they could know what I've learned.
Yes.
And that's the book that I'm now promoting and going on interviews about. And that's What to Do When You're Dead. A former atheist interviews the source of infinite being.
I just think it's just so wonderful when you to be speaking to someone like yourself who has gone through that change, that process. I mean, to lock yourself away for a year. I mean, how did your close? I mean, do you have the much family? I mean, brothers, sisters, or?
Yeah, and I kind of had to keep it a bit of a secret,
Right.
because and I was living up in New York, but my family, I grew up in Kansas City, Missouri, middle America. And so I had moved 7 years prior to New York City to fulfill my dream as a photographer. And so people didn't really know what was going on with me during that time. I was isolated enough, and my friends up in New York were all so busy in their own lives to really pay attention to where or that I had disappeared. The secret that I had to keep from my family had a lot to do with when I was 2 years old. The mantra that I told as I was growing up was that my mother ran off with the Moonies when I was 2. So my family was torn apart by religion and what was at the time considered a religious cult. So for me to suddenly become immersed in this monastic, monk-like lifestyle was, a secret I had to keep.
And how have they received your book now, and your colleagues as well?
Well, I have to tell you, it's taken me about 3 years now just to be comfortable saying the word God.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been kind of spilling it out little by little, and they have certainly noticed a huge change in the person that I was before and the person that I am now. And I had also since met my husband and moved down to Houston, Texas, met my husband, and
Forgiveness had taken place.
Yeah, and gifts, wonderful, beautiful gifts of normalcy. And my husband had a son already, so I had an instant family, and a lot of goodness has occurred.
And forgiveness was forgiveness, that must have been somewhere in the writings that you did for a year, because obviously we all have things to forgive, and it sounds like you did as well for your mother.
Yeah, and I could say that during that year it was really coming to terms with the whole thing and being able to approach it without I wouldn't say that I fully forgave until this first book. In the first chapter of What to Do When You're Dead, God really puts shows the difference between, or shows me there was no difference in my life before and after I met God. The only difference is how I perceive it.
Yes.
And so God led me through my past in a way to show the purpose in my having lost a mother at a young age, so that one day I would fulfill my mission that I'm fulfilling now.
Right.
Because I buried my life or affection in God at the age of 2 rather than in a mother. So that's a fascinating part of the book.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I mean, it's. I can't imagine just some of the things that you must have scribed down, and we'll try to get into that. But just a question now that's just coming to me is did you have to relearn to love yourself in this process as well?
I would say not relearn. I had to learn how.
Oh, right.
How to love myself. The moment that it happened, I don't know how long we have until you have to break.
We've got about 3 minutes. Go ahead, please.
Okay. I remember during that year when I had a day where I just couldn't stop crying. It was just uncontrollable sobbing, and my head was down on the table, and God put this image in my mind of puppies. And these puppies in this vision, more than just an imaginary event, but a real vision that felt tangible. These puppies nosed their way under my hands and up my neck, and I felt their fur and their need for my attention and affection. And as I cuddled them in my imagination and held them and cared for them, I realized that this is God telling me that I am these innocent beings being cared for by a great being. And it was at that moment that I surrendered to that care and the tenderness and kindness that I would express toward these gentle beings, these little animals, is how I would now begin to treat myself.
Right. So kind of like a mirror in a sense. In that experience. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, every day must have just have been magical on that journey when you was just, writing. It must have been a process where you just didn't want to stop some days.
And right, that's absolutely right. And the only time sometimes that I could stop was when my hand would just ache and I had to stop, or when the answers became so complex that they would put me to sleep, and I would be almost writing like this, and God would stir me up and wake me up, and you must listen and pay attention and interact. My mind had to interact with that, but because when you're so deep into spirit, the body goes to sleep because you're more spirit than body at that moment, at that point. So it was a real struggle sometimes.
Okay, well, we're going to take a short break, so stay tuned and we'll be right back.
The More Show is in partnership with Ozark Mountain Publishing, taking readers beyond the unexplained.
Visit themoreshow.co.uk/shop to purchase products and services from your favourite past guests. If you're new to this site, you can also catch up on the previous television and radio shows through YouTube and the More Show website.
The More Show is supported by Mindscape, Paranormal and UFO Matrix magazines, available for download on all major digital platforms. Broadcasting from the studios of Radio Cardiff, you're now watching The More Show.
Welcome back. I'm still joined by former atheist who has had a conversation with God, Sondra Sneed. Sondra, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
Sondra, just looking at you on the video here, you seem so very centered. You seem very calm. in control. I mean, is that the Sondra before this experience as well?
I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think so at all. I wasn't centered at all. I was all over the place, and certainly former boyfriends could probably tell you I was kind of crazy. But it was because I felt very much alone. I just didn't have any. I was out on my own pretty young, and I had a great deal of fortitude and an adventure, but I had nothing to really depend on and rely on like I do now. And what's cool about that for any other young woman who might, feel that way in their life is that the cool part is that centeredness doesn't come from a relationship with anyone except yourself and with the being that made you. So you can take all the pressure off of everybody else to try to make you whole and try to make you give you all the things that you think that they owe you.
But if you're happy in the moment with your life, so that's fine as well. You don't change for anyone. But if there are points in your life where you get to where change shows up in a sense, then you can look at life with a different viewpoint, and that's where your work comes in, I think, and that's why it's so important.
Yeah, I think the beauty of change at this point in my life now compared to before is that even though I thrived on change, it scared me because I didn't have any center to return to in the moments of fear, and I didn't have anything guiding me except sheer gumption and ambition. But those things are vapors in the in the essence of what you really are. Especially when you identify with what you do for a living, that becomes if that's your identity, and something changes you, then you lose your identity. But when your identification is with the being that you are eternally, then that never changes.
And when you say the being that you're eternally, sorry, yes, what you mean by that, your soul, the essence inside us all.
Yes. Yeah, the being that, and how God explains it in my book is that spirit begat soul, and soul begat body. So they're all connected, but they represent varying levels of vibrational signature. So our molecular construct that is body is more dense than soul, but there is an aspect of soul that is mortal, and that's the part that identifies with this body as being what it is. That sounds a bit esoteric and cryptic.
No. So if I sum that up, what you're saying, we are a spiritual being having a human existence.
Yes, and I don't think a lot of people really, they say that, but don't really feel it. They feel the body, they feel their experience in the body, because the body is a mind of its own, and it reassures us constantly through pain, exhilaration, emotion. It's always reinforcing its existence with us. So the concept that we are essentially an unseen being, a formless being that is holding this molecular structure we call a body in suspension. It's like if you take, they used to have these really cool oil and water glass boxes, and the oil and water would separate. And if you shake that up, then the oil would mix with the water in suspension. It wouldn't, it can't really mix. And that is how spirit and body is. And body would be represented by the oil, and spirit water. And the reason for that is that within water, it is conductive. It is a conductive medium.
Yes.
And it is also what generates life. Water, nothing can live without water. And oil can't create anything organic. So just as the body on its own is lifeless, the spirit is what brings life. The spirit of you that is you, the formless being that you are, is what is animating this body.
Yeah.
I know you know that. I was just wanted to.
Oh no, I think the way you're describing it is fantastic for us in the audience. It's and please do text in if you've got questions on any of these subjects, if you want them breaking down a bit, please do. So, what do you think people like Richard Dawkins are missing out on by the way that they by being an atheist?
What they're missing out on is the nature of kindness. And when I say kindness, I don't mean just being nice to people. I mean kinship, the nature of all things coming from the source of being. In kinship, connecting to it. And the reason that kindness is so important to spirit is that when we are kind to another, the nature of spirit, which is contained within the imagination, our imagination, is a closed system. No one, for instance, can give you love, nor can anyone take love from you. What happens is they either remind you of the love you are, or they make you forget because they have forgotten and they withhold. Or they, in my book, God says they repress the love that they are. And that is really what the misunderstood word evil is in God's way, in God's taxonomy. Evil is the underworking of love, and love is the source of all existence. It is actually a substance from which all is created.
And why do you think, though, that you didn't turn to any sort of religious factor when you was going through this transformation? Because, was there a point where you did think that you would feel more comfortable with what you were going through to be shared with in a Christian or other sort of religious context?
Because religion is, I can't believe I'm going to do this, but I'm going to quote Deepak Chopra. And he says that religion is belief in someone else's experience, where spirituality is belief in your own experience, or something to that nature. Mm-hmm. And even Jesus said, "You are the church." And that has also been widely misunderstood. What he meant was that contained within you is the kingdom of God, and so your relationship with the self that you are, and the heart of God within you is the church. And as that as your heart expands, the church expands. And people think that you have to go to temple or to mosque or to church in order to fellowship with other believers to raise their spirit or spiritual awareness. But all that's happening in that case is you're just being reminded of what God will tell you if you simply look within. Now, I will say, since I've met my husband grew up Christian Science, and Mary Baker Eddy is a God scribe, was a God scribe in the 1800s, like me, and she established the Christian Science Church and Christian Science Monitor, which is a highly esteemed journalistic worldwide media outlet.
Yeah.
And I, from an intellectual standpoint, love reading her book, Health and Science with a Key to the Scriptures, because I read the same being that I talk to in her scribings. Also in ancient Hebrew texts, wherever I can find, the rabbinical study, as getting as close to the original scripted work, that I enjoy very much. But going to a church and talking to people who believe, who haven't had an experience and don't have a relationship either with God or with Jesus that's very personal to them, it's very difficult for me to have conversations with them, because they often misunderstand some of the most powerful and profound scripture, and I don't like getting into arguments.
Well, that's where it leads to, doesn't it? They're right, you're wrong, and this, which is just where some people are, and that's fine as well. It's everyone's entitled to their own opinion.
Everyone's at their own level of understanding.
Absolutely, and you should never take it away from them, neither.
Right, and you can't, but you can certainly make them feel like you're trying to.
Yeah. Well, I always wonder, did Jesus want a religion after him, as it is today? I mean, I get told by other people I've interviewed that that's the last thing he wanted.
I believe that. And the Buddha was the same.
The same with the Buddha, that's right.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about Muhammad. I would have to study that too. I'm in the Western world, and just like most people in the Western world, we are affected by the extremists of religion as a whole. But when there's war involved, there is certainly a protection that makes it difficult to bridge.
Well, that's right. I mean, that's not love, is it? I mean, you see some of these great political figures who call themselves a particular religion, and that particular religion is supposed to come from love. Yet they parade their worldly goods in front of people who can never afford them. There's poverty on the streets, there's kids on the streets. Where's the love of their religion in that instance? It's never there.
I would say to that, I know what you mean. But I'm going to take what you mean, and put it to the side, and say that to parade one's riches among the poor is really bad taste. But to be ashamed of the blessings that you've been given because of your surrendering to the path that God has you on, is also not good either. Like Joel Osteen, do you know of him or have seen him? He's a pastor here in the United States, and he's very popular.
Yes, I think, has he been on Oprah? Is that the one?
Oh, sure. Yes,
I do. We'll put a link on the website for this as well. Yes, go ahead.
Joel Osteen is one who he's extremely wealthy now from the sales of his books, and his church membership is just enormous. And so people who are probably non-believers or the media who frown upon wealthy religious types may accuse him of not understanding the poor, but his whole mission is to uplift. There's nothing in the kingdom of God that says you must be poor or have to be poor or in pain or suffer. There's no reason to suffer if you're walking alongside the great giver of all life, the great diversity of life itself.
Right.
You see the wealth of a peacock and of a giraffe, the beauty in nature, and see that God is giving great wonders to all of God's creations. Why is it that the poor have to think that they're forgotten by God? They're not. They've simply forgotten their own greatness.
And their own power. So what you're saying is we have the power of manifestation. And that's the power of God, is it not?
Absolutely. And to suffer and waller in constant
Victim consciousness.
yeah. That's not expressing God in God's greatest manner, for sure. But I'm not condemning it by any means. I'm just saying that you can be pretty godly and wealthy at the same time, and you can be pretty godly and have absolutely nothing, but so grateful for what little you have. Be grateful for shoes on your feet when you had none just a week ago. Be grateful for the clean water you have to drink when you had to walk 10 miles to get it. I mean, gratitude is what builds abundance.
Okay, well, we're going to take a short break there. The phone lines will now be open for you to speak to former atheists, Sondra Sneed, or to share your opinion. You can call us on 0292 000 3666 or text your comments and questions to 07728 758 759. International listeners outside the UK may Skype the show by adding the More Show live, or you may choose to interact with us on Facebook and Twitter.
The More Show is in partnership with Ozark Mountain Publishing, taking readers beyond the unexplained.
If you like what you watch, then don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest updates on The More Show. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for new weekly television and radio shows.
The More Show is supported by Mindscape, Paranormal and UFO Matrix magazines, available for download on all major digital platforms.
Sondra Sneed, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be back.
Just at the top of this hour here, I just want to plug your book as well. Now, your book is called What to Do When You're Dead, a former atheist interviews the source of infinite being. Is there links on your website for this book as well?
Yes, there are. And there's also on my website a free download for people to download the 5 principles for quieting the mind and listening to your higher self. So if you there's a little tab that comes out that says free download, and you put your email address in there and your name, and give me a high note, say hello, and I'll send that to you immediately, and then I can let you know when my how to get my books, or I won't spam anybody, I promise. I'm not a big marketer.
You look like a lovely person, don't worry.
Okay, thank you.
So we're going to put a link for your book onto our website as well.
Thank you.
But, according to your conversations with the source, with God, is there a purpose why we're here on Earth? And is it sort of like a nursery school? Because some of the spiritual teachers I've had on, like for example Dolores Cannon, have regressed people to say that this is what comes through, that this is a nursery level, kindergarten sort of place to be.
I guess that's one way of looking at it. I like I have a different way of saying it based on my interviews with God. We are the unseen spirit beings, and we have a less dense molecular structure. And so it's all about the nature of being. Everything you need to figure out is about the nature of being. And so there's becoming and there's being. Becoming is, of course, the stage before being. The only way for spirit to move from one state of being to another in order to ascend to higher and higher states of being, reaching higher in the sense of, if we think of God as great, and I mean great as in magnitude, not more than good, but as in great magnitude. And we think of ourselves as these spirit beings that are chips off the old block, or cells, actually, cells, cells within cells within cells within cells of the single cell that is God and that is the source of being. So these individuated cells, in order to expand, it's a literal expansion of consciousness. We have to move from one state of being to another. And in order to do that, the previous state of being has to overlap with the will, the being that we wish to become. So there is a being, a becoming, which is the combination of wish and will. It is only through the body that can hold memory, so that past, present, and future can coexist in a state of being conscious of them. We're conscious of what happened yesterday, and we're conscious of what will happen tomorrow, and we're conscious of how to get to where we need to go through some system of will to get there. And that requires memory.
Yes.
There is no memory in the state of God realm, in the state of spirit realm. There is no time. It is the state of timelessness. It is past, present, future, all at one time. So we can't expand our consciousness and expand our state of being except through a physical expression of the previous being into the new being. So if you are a spirit, the spirit of you wishes to be more adventurous, let's say, more adventurous, to explore more things, and you're a timid spirit, then, and this part I learned through this brilliant book, Journey of Souls. Who are you familiar with that book?
Yes. Michael. Who's the? Well, yeah, I know the book. Yeah, sorry.
Yes, where he
Michael
he
Newton.
interviews. Yes. And so as his patients, subjects explain it while they're under hypnosis, that so you are given this lifetime of possibilities, and then you become physical, through what we call birth, and you're given parents that would identify with, a genetic way, a mixture to make you into the possibility of becoming the new being you wish to be.
Right. So choosing our parents, choosing some of the scenarios there's still free will there, from what you're saying, but allowing us to reinvent ourselves at any moment throughout the life that we were incarnated into.
We willed ourselves into being, and we willed ourselves from the sperm and the egg. We were willing that being to occur all throughout. And in fact, one very interesting tidbit, I asked God about homosexuality. What is that? And sometimes it's psychological. Choice because of abuse or something of that nature, but often it is caused when you, before being in the state in the womb where you are flushed with hormones to change your gender or to create the gender you're going to be, even before that state, you are programmed to be the gender you are to become. So for me, I was pre-programmed to become a woman in this particular lifetime. Now, if I chickened out while in my mother's womb and decided, man, I don't want to be a woman, they have it really rough in the business world, and I don't really want to deal with that. You could chicken out to such a point that the bath of hormones doesn't turn you into that gender that you were meant to be. So so the spirit of you is one gender, and the physical you is another gender, because we are constantly in the state of free will to make choices all the time.
Okay. No,
Yeah.
I mean that's. I didn't read that part of your book, but that's really that's another.
That part's not in the book.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah. These are your opinions, and they're very
they're what God
interesting.
told. So they're not my opinions. There's a difference.
Oh, sorry, they're from
opi-
the source. Yeah.
that particular story was from the source. Now, I do have opinions, mind you, that I have not confirmed with God, but in this particular case, that was a story that God told me when I asked about why is it that some people are homosexual.
Yeah. Okay. So. Well, I suppose you could have. They could have been female in a past life, and and this is the first life as incarnate in the male form. So because I've been told this before from other interviewees, and so it's a tough transition, and they're experiencing what they want to be in that moment. They're the absolute free will and love to do and express the person that they are, and it's only us that judge, isn't it, really? I think we may have just lost her there. Let me just see if we can just get her back. Sondra, can you hear me at all? No. We've just lost her there, so we're just going to try to get her back. Just bear with us. That was interesting, wasn't it? Hey, her work's just
Hello?
so fast.
I'm
I can hear
losing
you
your
now.
signal.
Yep,
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. You've come back. Thank
Hello?
you. There
Are you
you
there?
are. Oh no, we've lost you again.
Are you? Can you still hear me?
I can now. I think
You
the
can.
technicians just fixed that. Thank you very much.
Okay, good. But I was going to say, and I was going to absolutely agree with that, what you had just said, because when can you still hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, good. Okay. When God had to teach me how to be a woman, because I grew up professionally and without a mother to teach me femininity and femaleness. So I imitated my father, even though I loved all of the trappings of femaleness, hair, makeup, nails, all of that stuff. I still behaved in the manner of men. I didn't understand what being a woman was. And it was in that year of solitude that God taught me how to become a woman. And it's a very different strength that is a perfect complement to the male of the man who becomes the man and carries the true nature of manness in the manner in which manness is meant to be. And womanness is meant to be. They are complements.
They are,
on
yes.
purpose,
Yeah. Okay.
not
okay.
opposites.
Okay.
They are complements.
And I'm very conscious of time here. I mean, I wish we had more time with you. So many questions that we could get through, but let's try to focus on what God told you about. Warnings, for example. What were some of the warnings that were given in your channeling?
All right. So, how long do I have to tell you this?
Let's try to do it in about 4 minutes, because I've got one other question in with that as well.
Okay. So the issue with the book, What to Do When You're Dead, the reason for that title is that God is giving us a warning that human beings are on a path of self-destruction, that human beings have been wiping themselves out for millennia, and as evidence in ancient ruins around the world. We wipe ourselves out about every 10,000 years or so. But what's different about this time, God says, is that the small band of humans that's usually left after we off ourselves is that they may not come back because we're poisoning our food supply. And that there's 4 issues humankind is facing right now. First of all, that we are choking ourselves off from our resources and the source of all life, which is water, through damming up all the rivers and the streams, so forth. Secondly, we are depleting the oxygen levels in the atmosphere that are necessary for sustaining human life. Thirdly, we are making a huge mistake to think that burning fossil fuels is what's heating up the planet. What's heating up the planet is that we are wiping out the biomass, the biosphere. We're knocking down the trees and the green and all of the oxygen generating and water cycle creating organisms and the trees that are essential for sustaining human life and all protein-based organisms and life. And then finally, we're poisoning our food supply because we're generating cycles of fake food. I think a lot of people now know what's happening on the food front, but what they don't know is that it is causing a great number of cancers that will eventually be too numerous to treat, because we are stripping out the nutrients necessary for the cells in our bodies to work properly. So the calling cells and recalling cells, our cells work in a call-recall behavior. And as they call for what they need, if there's an interruption, they can't get what they need for some reason. The cells keep calling and calling and calling and calling. And that is the cancerous tumors, the malignant tumors that continue to call, not getting what they need.
Okay. Well, that's yeah. So we have a choice, really, with a fork in the roads, and which way we're going to go will be up to us. And maybe we're making a difference just right now having this conversation. Maybe we are. It starts from just talk. At least to get the message out there. And I think that's the important bit about your book, is that I wish you all the success with it. I really, really do, because I think your work is just as fascinating as some of the other spiritual gurus out there. Most definitely. Okay. Well, we're just about to come to the end of the show here. Is it true that we can all have our own conversations with God?
Yes, in a word, absolutely. But you have to be willing to get really quiet and to still the mind and to learn how to turn off that thinking brain. Like Einstein said, what happens when you become lazy and start thinking, you lose your imagination. And it's only in the imagination that you can start to find the mind of God. Even if you don't find God, which is impossible anyway, because God is all that ever was and all that is. So you can't find that in any one singular fashion. But as long as you find the mind of God and put the mind of God into anything and everything that you do, then you will expand the world from your center, and
Okay.
from your center it goes.
Okay. And Sondra, your website, please?
SondraSneed.com. That's SondraSneed.com.
Sondra, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on.
Oh, it has been my pleasure. Thank you so much, Kevin.
Thank you very much. Well, we've come to the end on tonight's show. Don't forget that you can listen and watch all our past interviews on The More Show's official YouTube channel. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for new daily shows. You may also find more on all past and upcoming guests on the show via themoreshow.co.uk, so do like us on Facebook for the latest updates. So until next time, be safe.
Visit themoreshow.co.uk/shop to purchase products and services from your favourite past guests. If you're new to this site, you can also catch up on the previous television and radio shows through YouTube and the More Show website.